The Institute for the Study of Peak States presents the 5th International Psycho-Immunology and Psychobiology Research Symposium. In this video today, a discussion on business risk for psycho-immunology by Shayne McKenzie.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. This presentation is going to be on the business risks and opportunities with psycho-immunology. So my name is Shayne McKenzie. I'm the CEO of the Institute for the Study of Peak States. So let me start with the psycho-immunology opportunities. So our approach to psycho-immunology has potential to eliminate both psychological disorders as well as medical conditions. A lot of our focus in the past has probably been much more on the psychological disorders, but more recently, we're really making some great breakthroughs with medical conditions, and we're going to have some of those treatments for release later this year. So the kind of examples with psychological disorders that can be addressed with psycho-immunology. So I've got mind chatter, hearing voices, and schizophrenic voices all in the one category. And that's because while obviously mind chatter just about everyone has, and schizophrenic voices is obviously psychological disorder, the underlying biology behind this is actually the same. So the treatment that we would use for a client with schizophrenic voices is the same treatment that we use for just about everyone in the audience that hasn't had our silent mind treatment, just so that their mind chatter has disappeared and they just have a quiet mind. So that's possible. If someone is kind of emotionally unstable or histrionic personality disorders, which in our model is due to a subcellular case that we call S-holes, which stands for sucking holes. So what we've done in our research is part of the challenge sometimes with a number of psychological disorders is they're quite subjective symptoms that could actually be due to a number of different root causes. And what we've tried to do in our research is not only identify, look at the presenting symptoms, but what's a kinesthetic marker that helps us more accurately diagnose what's the root cause of this particular symptom. So there's a number of things that might actually contribute to these symptoms of being emotionally unstable or histrionic personality disorders. But when it's due to this subcellular case that we call S-holes, there's an experience down the center line of the body where you can feel that. So a very kinesthetic marker to let us know. And so we've now worked out in our trauma therapy training, we've helped our students understand how to diagnose and treat that kind of one issue at a time. What our psycho-immunology approach allows us to do is to globally eliminate that issue altogether, which then means that you would eliminate that particular disorder altogether as well. Any kind of psychosomatic disorders or emotional disorders with the onset specific to childhood. So this is a particular psychological disorder that could have multiple different causes. One of those possible causes is something that we call copies. So with a copy, it would be, it actually doesn't feel like it's your trauma. You really have copied trauma symptoms from someone else, usually during childhood. And so that's why it appears like the disorder was onset during childhood, but it wasn't actually their specific trauma. And so again, in our trauma therapy trainings, we've been teaching our students how to diagnose and treat these kind of one copied trauma symptom at a time. Whereas in fact, we probably have, many people might have hundreds of these copies, but not all of them are kind of activated at the same time and impacting us all the time. So we don't necessarily notice all of them at once. And whereas we now have worked out how to come up with a global treatment for that to get rid of all of those copies. And this is one where it would kind of be part of a treatment for someone. You wouldn't necessarily come in and go, oh, can you get rid of all of my copies? Because everything that we do needs to have a clear result that we're actually aiming for. And at the moment, there's not necessarily a clear result because it could be any type of trauma symptoms that you've copied from someone. But those that have been through the safety and efficacy testing and tested this treatment for getting rid of all copies have been surprised at how much better they've felt once they've actually released all of these trauma symptoms that they've copied in the past. Then another possibility would be something like a depressive disorder that could be due to what we call soul loss. So some of the subcellular case names that we've used, if there's a phenomenon or a diagnosis that's already been used in the past, then we'll actually tend to use the same name. So this the name soul loss actually comes more from shamanic practices, but from a psychological perspective, it could be one of the possible causes of depressive disorder. Now, the reason for that is the key symptom around what we call a soul loss is that there's a deep sadness or longing or missing of someone or something that just continues well beyond what would be kind of normal. Now, obviously, if you have a family member or a close friend or a pet that passes, it's natural that you're going to grieve. But when it's this subcellular case called a soul loss is triggered, the emotional reaction is overwhelming and beyond what would be kind of considered normal for the situation, and it goes on for much longer than you expect, and therefore with those kind of symptoms could then be diagnosed as a depressive disorder. So again, in our trainings until now, we've been helping our students understand how to diagnose and treat this kind of one symptom at a time. But now we've actually come up with a global approach to get rid of all of those soul loss symptoms all in the one go. So pretty amazing kind of outcomes we're getting just from a psychological disorder. But now even bigger implications around the kind of things that we can do, because the psychological disorder stuff, there's probably some help you can get for this. You're not necessarily going to eliminate those issues most of the time, but at least be able to manage them and feel like you're making some progress on it. But some of the medical conditions we're going to be able to address, there really isn't any help, or if there is, it doesn't necessarily work for everyone. So examples would be Lyme disease. So obviously with Lyme disease, most common approach is to take antibiotics, and that does work for some people, but it definitely doesn't work for everyone. So you do end up with a proportion of people who've contracted Lyme disease through a tick bite who end up with chronic symptoms and quite debilitating, chronic pain, fatigue and other types of symptoms that really make it really has a significant impact on their quality of life. So we have got a prototype treatment for this that we're in the middle of doing testing for, and we're really confident that we're actually going to have a treatment ready for release later this year. Traumatic brain injury, this is something we've been researching for quite a while. We did have some kind of earlier versions that helped some people, but now with this new framework, the latest breakthroughs that we've made around psycho-immunology, we now have a much more effective treatment, both simpler to do, therefore a high proportion of people can completely finish the treatment, and therefore we're going to have more permanent results for those that have had chronic TBI symptoms. So again, I guess to some extent similar to Lyme disease, most people who get a TBI actually just naturally recover. Maybe a week or two, and maybe some chronic headaches or headaches they had, or not feeling all that clear in their thinking. A week or two later, they're kind of back to normal. Whereas there is a small proportion of people who have a TBI that then have chronic symptoms for months and even years. So we've kind of worked out that it's not the actual injury that's the issue as far as recovering from a TBI. It's the brain's ability to repair itself. And there are a couple of pathogens that actually, subcellular pathogens that prevent the brain from fully repairing itself. And so we've got a prototype treatment for releasing those two types of fungus, and therefore, once they're released, the chronic TBI symptoms almost instantly disappear. It's just amazing to watch. So we're going to have a case study, a couple of case studies around that over the week. Chronic fatigue syndrome. Again, we've been kind of researching this for quite some time, and we've worked out what the root cause of this is as well. And again, we've got a prototype that we're now in the middle of testing, and we believe we're going to have that ready for later this year. Autism is one that we've been researching for a very long time. We've actually already had some success cases in the past, but it's been quite a complex process in the past. With this new framework and the latest breakthroughs that we've made over the last year, we're now very confident that because we've already understand the biology of autism, and with the framework that we've got now, we believe it's just a matter of us, of the research team, having enough time to prioritize going back and coming up with the revised treatment for autism, and that'll be a lot easier for parents to be able to do for children with autism. We've also had a treatment for Asperger's syndrome for quite some time, and completely different root cause for Asperger's syndrome as it is for autism. Obsessive compulsive disorder, we actually have done research on this in the past, a couple of different types of symptoms and different treatments required because it's a different underlying fungus that's causing the issue. And so again, we've got some planned research to actually go back and review that with our new framework, new breakthrough, and we'll end up with new treatments for that too. Parkinson's disease, we've actually made really good progress with that. This is incredibly exciting that we won't be long till we're fairly confident we'll actually have a treatment for Parkinson's disease. Type 1 diabetes, as I mentioned, we've been really passionate about coming up with a treatment for that. There's some complexities to that we'll need to do some research on, but we're really hopeful maybe sometime next year we'll have a treatment for that. Alzheimer's and dementia is treatments that just about everyone in the institute that's been around for quite a long time. We're getting in the age category. This could be a really important one for us to be addressing soon. So it's going to be a high priority for future research. And multiple sclerosis is one that we've done a little bit of research on in the past, and so it'll be on our list. So they're just some of the examples of what we've been studying and kind of the progress that we've made. But the list is much longer than just what we've got here today. So over the past year then, we've kind of been shifting our breakthrough research from eliminating those psychological disorders, because we've been able to do that kind of one kind of symptom at a time. We've now got an approach for doing that globally. But now that we've been able to demonstrate that we can do this for medical diseases as well, that's where our research focuses. Our breakthrough research has been really focused lately. There's actually still been a lot of applied research time spent on the psychological disorders, but the breakthrough research team, our core basic research team of Dr. Mary Pellissier, Dr. Grant McFedridge, and Dr. Kirsten Lukegard, the three of them have really been focused on how do we get these new medical disease treatments available as soon as possible. So some of the things that's been different and why the change in and focus has been from the psychological disorders, as I kind of was pointing out with something like mind chatter, the underlying cause quite often is very common in the population. In fact, almost everyone ends up having the underlying cause at a subclinical level. So pretty much all of our volunteer research staff actually have the underlying cause at a subclinical level. And so that makes it really easy to, from a efficacy perspective, our research team and our certified therapists are all doing safety testing on, whether it's a common issue or whether it's, something that's more rare, like some of the medical conditions. So they're doing safety testing for all of those, but obviously we also need to be doing efficacy testing. So we need someone that's actually got the issue. But just about all of the psychological disorders, at some kind of level, we have the underlying cause. And with a lot of these, the biology or the root cause of them have actually been known to us for quite some time. So we actually know what the biology is, and therefore it's much quicker for us to then develop a psycho-immunology treatment for those. One of the challenges, I guess, from as I was mentioning, from a measurement perspective, is that it's usually quite a subjective diagnosis. And so we came up with our own kind of kinesthetic markers so that we could distinguish between the different root causes of common symptoms. So that made it easier for us to be able to predict whether we're actually likely to make a difference to the psychological disorder that a client might be coming to us with. And because of all of these things, because it's been much more common, because the biology's usually been known to us, and because we've had these kinesthetic markers, that's actually been ideal to continue to focus in the past around perfecting our prototype treatments. But now that we feel like we're in the position where we've really perfected the treatments, there's not really much more from a model perspective to make it a safe, simple, consistent, effective, permanent treatment. Now that we feel like we've perfected that, now the breakthrough research is now in the last year or so has been much more focused on how do we come up with psycho-immunology treatments for medical diseases. So in this area, much less common. So it really is, it's not a disease that at subclinical levels just about everyone's got. You really need to find someone that's actually got the specific disease we're looking to treat. So while we're doing some of the early safety testing with our research team, at some point you need a research client who's actually got the disease to actually see from an efficacy perspective whether it's actually working. So we needed to be really confident that our model was working before we would do that. In a lot of these situations, we don't know the root cause. So it's unknown etiology. So that actually takes a lot more research, a lot more specific skill based on a state of consciousness to be able to do that. It's a really unique part of the research that we're actually able to do with the very talented individuals that we have. One of the things that's great around some of the medical diseases is many of them do have objective measures. You can get laboratory testing to actually really see whether there's a difference before and after treatment to objectively measure whether it's worked or not just that they feel better after doing some kind of treatment. And probably the biggest reason is this where we think we can make the biggest difference to humanity. Going back to what our core purpose is around finding new ways to heal humanity. Just about everything in this field in conventional medicine would be considered to be incurable at the moment. So to be able to have treatments that can eliminate these diseases is incredibly exciting. And so that's where we want to focus our work. And for others that would be interested in researching using a psycho-immunology approach, based on the fact that there's such a big impact that we can make on clients and the kind of difference it's going to make to the quality of life, and therefore how much they'd be willing to pay to actually get that change in quality of life, there's a huge business opportunity. So our psycho-immunology approach actually eliminates the root cause of the medical condition. So current treatments for medical conditions that we are researching, either they're just managing the symptoms. So you take something like chronic TBI symptoms. There are some kind of bodywork things you can do, occupational therapy, that might improve things over time. But a lot of the times it's like, unfortunately, this is just, you have to accept this is just how you're going to be for the rest of your life. And how can we make your life adjust to the fact that you now have these chronic symptoms? Or like the case that I talked about with Lyme disease, the common approach, such as antibiotics, doesn't necessarily work for everyone. So there's definitely gaps in how to have a really effective treatment for most of these medical conditions. So the root cause of the medical conditions that we're researching are caused by a subcellular pathogen. And we then use our trauma release protocols to then eliminate this pathogen from the cell. So this is obviously a very different paradigm to most people in medicine and research. There definitely are, with some of the things that we're researching, some people that have identified some similar kind of findings. I think there's a book that we've read around OCD where some people have said they also believe, independently, that it's a fungal disease. So we're seeing kind of small examples, but it's very much the minority in conventional medicine. But we're pleased to see that others are starting to also discover independently what the real underlying cause is, which then, once you know what the real cause is, makes it a lot easier to then start to think about, well, how can we actually address that? And one of the things that's amazing is that the total current session time to actually go through the prototype is just a few hours, whereas a lot of current treatments to try and help clients with these medical conditions could be, weeks, months, even years to try and actually get them to a better state than what we're in at the moment. So from a financial perspective, the kind of opportunity that's actually there for medical conditions is really significant. Now, if you're an expert in researching any of these are very rough figures that I just quickly pulled up from the internet, and would want to do this in a much more detail. But just to give you an idea as to how big the opportunity is from a business perspective. So take something like chronic TBI. So there's over 1 million people every year in the US that would have chronic TBI symptoms. So like I said, a lot of people actually get a TBI and then just recover normally. It's a lot of these figures, it's not always easy to get accurate figures. So for example, with TBI, there'd be lots of mild TBIs that just never get reported at all. So the 1 million figure comes from how many emergency visits were there with a TBI, and what percentage of those actually ended up with chronic. So it's actually, even 1 million is a conservative number. It's definitely going to be more than that. And then there was some work that was done a little bit of time ago now, but the number's probably even bigger now, around what's the medical and indirect costs. And it's like $60 billion just in the US. So, clearly, globally, a massive opportunity as far as how big of an impact this is having on individuals and society and governments to actually support the people that are unlucky enough to have chronic TBI symptoms. So being able to permanently eliminate those symptoms can make a huge difference to the whole system. with chronic fatigue. The estimate I found was around 60 million adults worldwide, so lots and lots of people impacted by this. And one of the things that's a little bit challenging around some of the incidents and the estimated economic costs is a lot of the stuff on chronic fatigue combines. Now, I'm not real good at the scientific names. Myalgic encephalomyelitis, so ME or CFS. A lot of them are combined, and there's probably a good chance, we haven't researched ME, so there's a good chance that the biological cause of that might be different to what we've discovered is the chronic fatigue syndrome root cause. But still, the 15 to $50 billion, the economic cost last year. And so again, lots of people impacted, really significant economic cost. Lyme disease, the numbers are much smaller. So over 60,000 in the US, over 30,000 in Europe, only 2,000 or 3,000 in Australia. And the economic cost is about $1 billion a year in the USA. So that kind of works out to be about $16,000 every year for someone who's got chronic Lyme disease symptoms. With autism, just with children, there's at least around 5 million children worldwide. Obviously, adults as well. And some of the estimates were around 17,000 per child per year. So similar kind of numbers to the Lyme disease as far as the economic impact per person per year. And Parkinson's disease, more than 10 million people worldwide, about 1 million just in the US. And some of the estimates around economic cost of Parkinson's disease is estimated to be $52 billion a few years ago. So again, that probably works out to similar, even bigger numbers actually around how much of an impact that has per person with Parkinson's disease. So as you can see, the numbers are absolutely huge. So there's a real opportunity to make a massive difference to how many people we can help using psycho-immunology as a way to develop treatments, as well as the significant quality of life and the economics that has an impact on governments and private healthcare and individuals. So let's look at some of the investments that are required to be able to research and deliver these type of treatments. So as I briefly mentioned, it really requires highly specialized skills in the breakthrough research area. You need to have a very rare state of consciousness. And so it's not just a matter of, here's the education required and just train them to get the skill. So you do need to be able to find very unique individuals to be able to do the breakthrough research. And it's actually quite a different approach to safety and efficacy testing as it is to drug research. There are some things, some principles are very similar as far as, prototype and then phase 1 testing, phase 2 testing, this sort of stuff, and more people as you get through to make sure that it's safe and effective. But it's quite different in that, in early stages would be doing, testing on mice and this sort of stuff, which is clearly we're not going to be doing with the kind of work that we're doing. And so one of the things that we've developed is one of the key reasons for having the network of certified therapists is that they're actually involved in the safety testing. And so they're trained in how to do the trauma release techniques. And so they've become good at doing the safety testing for us. And as I'd mentioned, with the medical disease treatments that we'll be releasing with psycho-immunology, given the value that's going to be added and therefore the money that people will be looking to pay, a lot of those clients are probably going to be expecting to actually walk into a physical clinic, shake someone's hand, to make sure that they feel confident this is a real organization, even though we do a pay for result. So they're only going to end up passing over their money if it actually works. And then couple of risks that we've thought about. There's going to be much more, but two that we thought were quite interesting around regulatory risk and protecting our intellectual property. So from a regulatory risk perspective, at the moment in psycho-immunology, there actually wouldn't be any current laws. So the kind of regulatory stuff around medical research, the assumption is that it's pretty much drugs or surgery that's actually going to address medical conditions. So there isn't any current regulation, and a lot of that is because conventional medicine wouldn't actually believe that this kind of approach is actually real. And so the interesting thing for government organizations and I guess medical associations would be that regulating it would actually be acknowledging that it really is real. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But either way, so we've actually been putting in place I guess systems with our own safety and efficacy testing. So kind of from a self-governing perspective, follow the same kind of principles, but with an approach that we think would work. And so even if regulation was put in place, we're in a good shape for being able to address that. Then the other one that's quite interesting is around protecting our intellectual property. Given the magnitude of the opportunity, it's the kind of thing that people would want to get their hands on. So the last time we checked, which is quite a while ago now, we might need to check again, but it actually wasn't possible to patent these types of processes. Now, initially that might sound like an issue, but in fact, it might be a good thing because it means some large organization with billions of dollars can't kind of grab this technology and patent it and therefore prevent anyone else from actually being able to use it. So we actually kind of look at this kind of more glass half full, that we think that's probably a good thing. So we obviously still have copyright protection. Obviously all of our research and treatment documents are all copyrighted. So that's one level of protection. And as I was mentioning before, diseases of unknown etiology really require unique skills to be able to identify what the root cause is. And so it wouldn't be just a matter of, like we experienced ourselves a few years ago when we trained some of our therapists, just having the knowledge wasn't enough to be able to then apply the knowledge and actually come up with the breakthroughs to be able to get treatments that are going to be simple, safe, and effective and permanent. So anyway, so the business opportunity is very significant. There are some key investments for this unique approach, but we think we're in a good position to manage the key risks that we've identified so far. So again, same kind of websites. I imagine everyone's probably seen that from my first one, and I don't have much time. I'll check and see if there've been any questions, but I don't really have time for questions. I might need to answer them. Okay, so I've got one question here that I'll answer, and then I'll hand over to our next speaker. So given there's a huge paradigm gap for today's science to accept your methods, what are the chances to find a working antibiotic drug for single or even whole parasite classes you have found? Would this approach even work in theory, as this is a no immunity upgrade for the brains, as I understand it? Thanks. So this is a good question. So you definitely could benefit from a drug research perspective, understanding what we know as far as what's the real root cause, what's the pathogen that's actually causing the disease. As you've mentioned, the challenge is going to be, it depends on what the disease is as to getting rid of it once is actually going to be okay. Because our approach actually, and it's called psycho-immunology because using trauma release type techniques, so a psychological type approach, the reason the symptoms disappear is that it's healing traumas that are effectively making you immune, because our model says that what has us bring in these kind of symptoms is that there's a part of us unconsciously due to some trauma that actually wants to hold on to the disease when we get exposed to it. So an antibiotic or some kind of drug approach would, as a short-term solution, eliminate the pathogen. I think that would be possible. I'm certainly not an expert in that area, but the issue would be that you're not immune to it. So if you then got exposed to that again in the future, then it may not be a permanent solution. So that'd be one of the things that would be different for each type of disease as to how that would play out. But that's my preliminary thinking on it. Might be something that we expand on some more in one of the panel discussions where Kirsten, with her background in pharmaceutical research, might have a more thorough answer for that. So thank you for that. That's all we've got time for, and we'll get ready for our next presentation.
Thank you for watching. For more information, please visit www.psycho-immunology.com.au.